Pistons fans are going to have very strong opinions about this. Now, when I was watching this clip on one of Underdog's new podcasts, it was Cade, so I clicked on it, and it started positive. I was like, cool. Rashad McCants, for what it's worth, most of the time I don't agree with him, but he was comparing Cade Cunningham to a 2025 version of Brandon Roy, which I don't agree with, but I was like, hey, at least he's talking positively about the Pistons and Cade Cunningham. But then Gilbert Arenas, he just could not help himself. It's something with the Detroit Pistons, and this is what he said about Cade Cunningham. I have the quote, and I'll just read it for you guys. He says, quote, I just see like some of them young kids, man, they're so good. They're too good for their city. Some cities like Detroit, probably. I don't know if he's a superstar yet. I don't know his mannerisms, like his personality, because he doesn't, get shown like that. But his game is big city, so it's going to be in one of those big cities, end quote. So, one, I don't agree with it. I think Cade Cunningham's game can flourish in Detroit. I think a lot of people, I don't know what it is about, media outside of Detroit. They think Detroit's a small market when it's not. We just had the NFL draft here. We broke a record. Had over, I don't even know how many people, close to 1 million people over, a 4-day period. But, I'm rambling a little bit. Zar, what do you think of these comments from Gilbert Arenas saying that Cade Cunningham's game is too good for a city like Detroit?
Yeah. First of all, Gilbert Arenas is, and it's rare that I often find myself, getting to the point where I just mute something on Twitter. There was a point, I think, last year where I just had to mute Gilbert Arenas just because he talks, and this is my issue also with NBA media in general, and this is why I kind of do what I do. I have an issue when people don't know what they're talking about, right? I love, and this is no shot to them at all, because this is completely different, but I love Inside the NBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inside the NBA, I love for entertainment value. It is a great TV show, but in terms of sports analysis and specifically basketball analysis, there's not much of value there. It's very just barbershop talk. It's super oh, did you see this happen? Oh, Chuck, that's crazy. It's not meant to be taken seriously. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people, I think of Nikias, who I really enjoy his content, but he gets really riled up about Inside the NBA. I don't think Inside the NBA really takes itself very seriously. And I think the mistake that happens amongst NBA fans is, they take what they say seriously, and they think that Shaq, Chuck, and Kenny are really seriously watching these games, when it's very clear that they're not. It's more just about the entertainment value. But when you guys have guys like Gilbert Arenas who get on the mic on their own platforms and say nothing of value and just continuously troll, to me, it brings down the value of the sport as a whole, and it gets muddied with just general discourse as well. It turns into this thing where an uninformed person is going to say something that has no merit to it whatsoever, but you throw it on Twitter and it just starts going.
Yeah.
And this whole big city discourse is one of those things. And I think Gilbert also just kind of has a gripe about the Pistons because he is a little bit scared of Isaiah Stewart, and that's another discussion. But I don't think there is such a thing as big city game anymore. And Eric Vincent, who's the Clutch Points reporter for the Pistons. He's been doing great work. I worked with him in the Cruise the last couple of years too. Asked JB about this, and I echo those sentiments that JB said, were basically that in this day and age there is no big city game anymore. Players reach where they reach regardless of market. And on top of that, Detroit, like you said, is not a small market. And it gets casted as one in the NBA, and I never really quite understood it, because consistently when they were at their peak, no one was selling out arenas like the Pistons were. And this is just also a really large city that's super passionate about their sports. Like it's obviously not this just population wise as big as a New York City or even like a Dallas, but I still think the Pistons and the city of Detroit as a whole are so unique in their passion for sports in general that it rivals like the UK where you talk about soccer. Like I was talking about this with someone earlier. I feel like Detroit really is so unique in their passion for sports that like it's like a culture. It's part of the culture here. And when the Lions lost that yesterday, like you could feel it, right? Like there's just a community effect. Like when you were around anywhere Metro and Metro Detroit yesterday, Lions gear everywhere. I drove past a cop car that had Lions flags on it. Like it's a serious thing here, and I feel like at some point, and I think the shift has started to happen, but not everybody catches up at the same time. And Gilbert Arenas has not been known in the recent years for really being super informed, so it doesn't surprise me. But like I've always really loved the UK and how they are about soccer, or football, and how it's something that just runs communities. Like it's something that everyone rallies behind, and I think Detroit's so similar in that way that if the Pistons make the playoffs this year, I know we talked about the Jared Goff chance, and that's its own thing, but I think you'll see a push behind Cade that shows you that it doesn't really matter what market he's in, especially because he's in Detroit. He has people that are basically gonna die on that hill, on the Cade Cunningham hill. Like as long as he continues to play the way he plays, and he gives people memories that they're gonna hold on to. Like I mean, I'm a walking example. At this point, I try to put my fandom aside when I cover the team, but in 2018, Blake Griffin was my guy. Like that was, and to this day,
I think we lost him for a minute. Okay, guys, it looks like
okay,
we. Okay.
yeah, big Gilbert Arenas trying to shut me down, but underdog heard the word and shut the stream down. But no,
Got the black SUVs in the by
yeah,
your
I
house
started
right
hearing
now.
sirens. I was like, I don't know what's going on. No, but basically my point is the Pistons are in a market that is so unique that is, in my opinion, the most passionate amongst the NBA. Like amongst the losing streak last year, they were still getting really, really solid crowds. Like that's just unheard of. So I wouldn't pay much mind, and I really feel like it's not even worth discussing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't pay attention to what's happening when it comes to the Pistons. I mean,
Mhm.
you can even think about not Gilbert Arenas, but Stephen A. Smith last year. He did that whole spiel about Monty Williams to go and praise the Lord that he's out of Detroit, and that just shows how little attention they pay to small markets. I mean, Stephen A. is not even knowledgeable about guys like SGA or like and Donovan Mitchell. I mean, he's having an MVP caliber season, but he's getting no push. And like, I think that's a problem with NBA media. To piggyback off Zarek, is they don't talk about the non-Steph, KD, LeBron. And Steph, KD, LeBron they're great, they're generational, but you have to do a better job of like talking about the guys who are actually building a product for the future of the league. And I feel like Cade, I don't understand why a lot of these like old head fans don't like him. He plays the old like an old school style of basketball for the most part. It's back to the basket from the point guard position. Like it's a lot of mid range stuff. Like I feel like he should be a lot of these guys' favorite players, but they don't pay enough attention to what's going on. Like Shaq, they had a whole debate about if he was an all-star with one inside the NBA crew, which was like some people said like the backup crew because it had I'm forgetting their names, but it wasn't Chuck and Kenny. And he was like, I think Cade's an all-star, but Chuck and Kenny would disagree. And then they had the same debate, and like they didn't say it was Cade. And Shaq goes, "Hell no, Cade ain't an all-star." So like it's just stuff like that where I'm just like, are you really paying attention? Do you even know what you're saying? Like,
Yeah, I mean, inside the NBA, like I know Czar touched on it earlier, it's more of an entertainment standpoint. Like those guys are probably the most casual basketball fans, they probably couldn't even name anyone off a bench, like on the Lakers bench right now. They probably couldn't name them, like whatsoever. I think that's why the NBA is looking to get into Amazon, and why like Blake Griffin and Dirk are going to start calling games, because I think what the NFL does a really good job of is they break down the game in the simplest form for even like maybe someone that's like an amateur fan can understand. And I think the NBA hasn't done a really good job of marketing um, the game that way, which I think they should. Like one of my favorite YouTube channels is B-Ball Breakdown. They do a really good job of just like, if you want to learn the game, like he kind of teaches you like certain plays, certain sets, certain actions. And I think that's what's kind of missing with the NBA. But Gilbert Arenas' comments with Detroit, because I listen to his podcast. I don't even know why I do it. I just do. But I think his biggest reason with Detroit has nothing to do with the Pistons beating his ass when he was a player. It's actually kind of funny. So Detroit was the only city to serve him papers for not paying his child support. So that's what happened in Detroit, because I went and listened to one of his podcasts over the summer. And like when I posted one of his clips, and I think I had the whole city on Detroit say, hey, like come to a barbecue, and there's no barbecue type shit. Like just jump his ass.
Yeah.
And he's wearing a Tayshaun Prince jersey like the next day. And he said, oh, the reason why I don't like Detroit is because they served me my papers and I didn't pay my child support. So that's the reason why Gil does not like Detroit, because they allowed a cop to serve him papers.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I think this came up with this whole story he told about Isaiah Stewart, and
Yeah.
how Gilbert will get behind a microphone like this and say one thing and then not have anything to say in real life. So it's interesting. Gilbert moves really, really interestingly, even in his NBA career. But it's when you're an NBA player and you retire and you get a microphone in front of you, you got something to do. So he's got something to do.